Hello, this is Brian. Today is Wednesday, May 31st, 2023, and I'm here at Big Rock Park in Santee, and it's time for an episode of Trees of San Diego County, since I'm technically not in the city of San Diego, even though I'm really close to it. Today, I want to highlight a species of tree very commonly planted here in Southern California, and it's this tree here. This is the American sweet gum, Liquidambar styraciflua. The American sweet gum is a generally winter-deciduous tree. In other words, leaves drop off in autumn and the tree is leafless in winter and leaves out in spring. And it is a member of the Altingiaceae family. It used to be labeled as a member of the witch hazel family back in the day. It used to be labeled as an Altingiaceae, but it's been found to be more closely related to plants in the Altingiaceae. So there we have it. So what we have here is a medium to quite large tree. And again, it's very commonly planted here. You're going to see this tree a lot if you live anywhere here, basically here in California, from near the coast, and sometimes they plant them up in the mountains. But it's very beautiful tree with this really nice gray furrowed bark and these beautiful star-shaped leaves. A lot of times they are five-lobed, as you see here. And then sometimes they'll even have a spur lobe here on the edge, on the bottom lobes. As you see here, this one actually has an extra set of small lobes. So why is this tree so commonly planted here in Southern California? Well, let's put it this way. Fall. This tree is known for very beautiful fall colors that are very extravagant. So I'm thinking I'm going to do this tree in episodes, so you can get appreciation for this tree in different seasons. So again, beautiful star-shaped leaves and different sets of flowers. As the tree leaves out in spring, you'll see these clusters of flowers at the tops of the twigs that look like this. These are the male or pollen flowers. So as the buds open up and the first leaves come out, you'll see these upright panicles of very pollen-heavy flowers. These are the male. This is a cluster of male flowers. So this is a male flower here. This is obviously old and dried up. But usually they're bright green and they come out with the first leaves in spring. And then a lot of times you'll see on the twigs these little dangling balls, which are the female flowers. The little dangling balls below hand are the female flowers, which eventually turn into these. The female flowers turn into these right here, which become a group of seed capsules. So that's what happens when they're pollinated. And then eventually they turn hard and fall off. You can see some of the older ones up here as well. So this is what the old capsule group looks like. Individual seed capsules all rolled up into a ball. The small, dusky seeds are usually sterile, whereas the small winged seeds that come out that have visible wings on them are the ones that are more likely to sprout. So this is a cluster of seed capsules that split open and are very spiny. So this tree has been planted very copiously during the landscaping here of Southern California. A lot of times you'll see them along business districts, parking lots, and a lot of times in people's yards. So I'll snap a couple pictures of some of the parts of this tree. Details. I know I'm a little quiet in this video, but there's just a lot of people around. Yeah, you know. So another interesting characteristic of these trees is sometimes, it's not too prominent on this tree or any of these other trees in the area, sometimes the twigs will have quirky outgrowths on them. Sometimes along the twigs. And it's not all the time, it's not on all trees, but sometimes the sides of the twigs will have these quirky wings outgrowing from the side. Again, it's not always the case, but on some trees, those twigs will look kind of winged. It's kind of interesting. So, the characteristic will be mostly found when the tree is leafless in winter. But let's talk about some of the other aspects of this tree, like talked about earlier, the fall color. Sweet gums have been known to have a very widely diverse palette of colors when it comes to autumn color. The typical color for a sweet gum tree is red, and a lot of sweet gum trees here in Southern California turn red in the fall. And as I'm going to be doing this in installments, this is the summer version. So you can see the tree is richly green. There's no fall color on this tree. But in coming months, be prepared for other episodes spotlighting this in fall. So again, expect installments of this episode. So this is the summer version, as the tree is fully verdant, leafed out, and green. So, however, there are a lot of different horticultural varieties of this tree. And this tree doesn't just change red. There are different types of sweet gums that will turn anywhere from yellow all the way to purple in autumn. So typically with these sweet gum trees, a lot of times there'll be some initial flush of slight coloration in late summer. I notice on a lot of the trees here in San Diego County, it's not always the case, but on a lot of trees I've noticed there'll be an initial touch of red and sometimes reddish purple on some of the leaves of some of these trees as early as August. So some of the leaves will start changing just a little bit. They won't start falling off yet, it's too early. They're still firmly attached to the twig. But the leaves will start changing, and you'll start seeing a little reddish hue in some of the crowns of these trees as early as August, even here in Southern California, where it seems to be summer most of the year. So some of these trees will start getting a little hue of color. They won't start dropping leaves yet, because the leaves are still fleshy and still attached to the twig very firmly. But sometimes as early as August, some of the trees will have a little bit of a dark reddish hue. While some sweet gum trees will stay green, fully green, and not have any indication of color until fall. And those ones sometimes will start out as yellow. You'll start seeing yellowing leaves, and you think, oh, it's just going to turn yellow and drop off. Whereas in reality, a lot of times it just sets the stage for their other colors, like the oranges and the reds, to take place. And there are specimens of these trees that are very reliable fall color specimens here, even here in warm Southern California. So there'll be sometimes stages of colors for these trees. Some of these trees will change very slowly, sometimes over a period of months, especially here in Southern California where it's warmer. So a lot of times the trees will stay green longer, or they'll color, and they'll take their time. Sweet gum trees can display fall color for months at a time. And it's one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite ornamental trees out here. So sometimes trees that start showing, I notice some of the trees that start showing color even as early as August, just little touches of it in the crown, will still have fall color on them in December. And some of these trees change color very late. So sometimes the peak of the fall color for some sweet gum trees, especially in milder areas, will actually be more in December. So even before Christmas, these trees will still have a lot of color on them. Now, sweet gum has a very wide range. The epicenter of the range is in the eastern half of the United States, especially from southern New England south along the east coast and also inland. But it ranges as far down south as Central America, possibly as far south as Nicaragua. So sweet gum has a very wide range. And with that, there are going to be a lot of differences in the behaviors of a lot of these trees. A lot of sweet gum trees that are from more northerly climates like New England, southern New England, the mid-Atlantic, they're the ones that are a little bit more reliable for fall color and to be winter deciduous. So the ones from the continental United States are more reliable for being deciduous, shedding their leaves in fall and changing the colors in a timely manner. There are a lot of trees that might have origins in Central America and South, where they might retain more of their leaves during the course of the winter. So there are a lot of trees that don't fully lose their leaves as well. You'll notice that on a lot of trees. So a lot of those trees, a lot of those sweet gums will actually retain their leaves, a nice chunk of them through the winter. So you'll notice those trees are probably from stock that's from further south in the warmer climates. So some sweet gums in the southern climates might retain some of their foliage in the winter months. And that is a possibility. But generally it's described as a deciduous tree. So depending on where the rootstock comes from will determine the behavior of the tree. And I've noticed that a lot. There's some sweet gums that turn some color but retain most of their leaves through the winter. Some that are reliably deciduous and shed their leaves. So the sweet gum tree has quite a bit of different behavior depending on where it comes from. So trees that are more from the southern climates might not fully shed their leaves for winter. So they might be technically considered semi-deciduous or even semi-evergreen. Because I've seen several sweet gum trees in Southern California that retain a lot of their foliage. So the ones that are from the more northern climates that are planted out here are the ones that are more reliable for a full color change in autumn and a full leafless profile. And the leafless profile in winter is actually quite nice, with the little seed capsule clusters hanging from the trees. It's actually quite a pleasant sight. It's pretty neat looking, and you get to really see some of the other features, like the big thick buds at the end of the stems, which obviously now that this tree is growing you won't get to see it, but in the wintertime you'll see these really big fat terminal buds that are very aromatic. And that's another aspect of the sweet gum tree that I've always liked, was the smell of the foliage. It has a very aromatic smell to it, very pleasant and very clean smelling. The leaves themselves have kind of a somewhat camphory type aroma. However, the buds themselves have a little bit more of a spicy aroma. So the buds themselves have a very, very nice spicy aroma. Very pleasant. So it's a very aromatic tree. It's a very resinous tree as well. And sometimes you'll see resin on these trees. And believe that some of the settlers used to chew the gum. Well, they call it sweet gum. I've never tried it myself, but that is another reason why we call this sweet gum, or sap gum is another name for Liquidambar styraciflua. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe get a couple of picks and let's see what else we can talk about this beautiful tree. So you see, some of these sweet gum trees can get pretty tall. In the wild, they have been known to get at least over 100 feet tall, maybe even over 150 feet tall. I have experienced seeing sweet gum in the wild before when I lived in northern New Jersey. There's this place called Great Swamp National Wild Refuge near Basking Ridge, which is in Somerset County, northern New Jersey. And I've seen these trees get up to about 100 feet tall, and we're growing in the middle of the swampy land. So these trees can be kind of drought tolerant. They can be quite drought tolerant. Maybe not extremely, but they can also be very wet tolerant as well, because they do grow in swampy areas as well. So I've seen them at the Great Swamp National Wildlife Refuge, and it's near this town called Basking Ridge in northern New Jersey, Somerset County. And these trees get very tall, very open, and very beautiful. And when I went was in early November, and they were already leafless by then, because New Jersey is a much different climate than this. And they were mostly leafless, and you can see they're very tall, lanky stature because they were growing in a very dense forest. So these sweet gum trees, a lot of times will start out kind of with a conical with crown, kind of pyramid shape a little bit. But then when they get older, depending on what kind of situation they're going in, they tend to have these tall, sometimes open, sometimes narrow crowns until they get much older. Then they become more broadened. But these trees are a little bit narrow. This is kind of a dense area, so you can see they're competing with these Canary Island pines and river red gum eucalyptus trees for light. So they're kind of growing like a forest tree here. But they're known to grow in lowland, swampy areas at pretty low elevations in the eastern half of the U.S. So, now they do make great shade trees during the summer. Being deciduous, they can let the light in and keep you warm in the winter. Now, there are a few things to watch out for with sweet gum trees. One aspect is their roots. If they're not watered deeply enough, their roots can be very invasive. So that's just a caution. It's not me hating on this tree, because I love this tree to death. I love sweet gums. It's one of the first trees I've ever had as a kid. It was a sweet gum tree. But these roots can be above ground, and sometimes they can heave pavement. And in these balls, these seed balls, can be a tripping hazard. And they can hurt your feet if you got bare feet, because they're very spiky. So with those out of the way, with those possible things to look out for out of the way, let's take some more time to admire this beautiful tree right here. Liquidambar styraciflua, American sweet gum. Somebody ask, why am I so personally invested in sweet gums? Well, like I said, it was one of the first trees I ever had as a kid. I've always admired their fall color, even before I knew what they were. Seen them growing up in San Diego, in Orange County, and even seen them back east in New Jersey. What's not to love? It's a noble, beautiful tree, capable of getting very large. I've seen some specimens here in Southern California that were close to 100 feet tall, and like I said, seen them back east where they were pretty large and in the wild, and also seen them cultivated. But sweet gum is one of the first trees I learned about as a kid as well, and it was the first tree that I got in spring of 1994, right before I turned 12 years old. My mother bought me a sweet gum tree when I was living in Claremont. Planted it in my backyard. I believe that was the turning point that got me fully invested and fully passionate about trees. It was a gift that I received maybe about a month or so before my 12th birthday in 1994. My mom brought home a sweet gum tree and I planted it in the backyard. And shortly after that, I was fully passionate about loving trees and very interested in trees and shrubs and plants. So why I'm so heavily crazy about sweet gums is this is one of the very first trees that got me interested and hooked on trees to begin with. So I had the sweet gum to thank for my love for trees. I do apologize if this video is a little chopped up and stuff. I had to keep shutting down the video because people kept walking by while I'm filming, and I don't want to get anybody else on camera. But the truth be told, this is one of the very first trees I learned about as a kid. One of the very first trees that I ever had planted, and basically the type of tree that got me into trees to begin with. Liquidambar styraciflua. So that's going to conclude it for my summer episode. Be on the lookout this autumn for a fall episode where I highlight these trees in fall color. And that's going to be a labor of love, because I'm going to have to go to a bunch of different spots and get the tree in different shades of color, because different trees have different fall colors. So coming up, probably starting October, but I don't know when I'm going to upload the video. Be on the lookout for the fall version of my trees of San Diego County. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on another episode.